Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Alana James, and it's the 23rd of May, 2017. I'm delighted to have you attending either in person or by recording for a very important and hope-filled session today on saving a dissertation or thesis through disaster. Used to be true that I would say, I don't say it anymore because it isn't a very hopeful thing, but I used to wonder, at least, if by going into postgraduate education, you were asking the universe to bring you every challenge you could possibly face, because I have seen students go through it all. So the goals that I have personally for this webinar are to offer hope to any of you doing postgraduate work, while also dealing with a severe challenge, whether that be on a personal, professional, or university level. And we'll look at all three. In order for you, the outcome, I hope, is for you to feel more comfortable, to pick up options that may help, and to have some tools to pass on to your friends if you have friends that may need them. So, our quotes. I think the important thing to remember is that lives are turned upside down by disaster, whether they're the nature giving us a disaster or other things giving us a disaster. And our best defense is a little bit of emergency preparedness. So that's the perspective that we're taking today. Not only what can you do when it strikes, but what could you have done to help it not strike? And all of you hopefully will take some of these things to heart. So a couple of other people, Karen DeCrow wrote that no matter what is happening in life or in the world, war, natural disaster, poor health, pain, the death of loved ones, if existence is filled with art, music, and literature, life will be a fulfilling joy. Well, I don't know if it's art, music, and literature for all of us, but certainly we all have some things in our lives which bring joy, and those are the things we need to focus on when we're also dealing with challenge. Harvey McKay reminds us that worrying about the past or the future isn't productive. When you start chastising yourself for past mistakes or seeing disaster around every corner, stop, take a breath, and ask yourself what you can do right now to succeed. Our agenda is to go through the three main kinds of disasters that I have seen plague postgraduate students, and then kind of take a step back on the overarching lessons that will be learned from that, and perhaps there's some other tools you might want to consider. What types of disasters are we talking about? Well, personal disasters include illness, your own or other people's, death, divorce, small disasters, suddenly coming up against something you're expected to know and you don't have any idea what is expected of you and sets you back. On a professional level, if for those of you who are working as well as being a postgraduate student, loss of a job or relocation of a job, but equally so on the professional, good news can cause just as much of a stall in your doctoral work. A new job, a promotion, being required to move for some positive reason is just as upsetting to the whole system you're working under as losing a job, being made redundant. In fact, in some ways, being made redundant can be excellent for someone who is in postgraduate work if it comes with a redundancy package, because then you have more time to actually devote to your doctoral work. So professional challenges can be a little bit up and down. University challenges, the everyday kind of ambiguity, independence issues, lack of support issues, those continue to go on, but there are also a series of research disasters that I will talk about. So let's take a look at the first one. Raise your hand if you have had any, well, let me go back to this slide. Raise your hand if you've had any of these. Annaline, Adrian, Annaline again, J. Mark, J. Mark, J. Mark, J. Mark said them all. So there, it's not an uncommon thing, and I think thank you all for doing that. I'll put your hands down. I think the important thing there is to take comfort from the fact that lots and lots of people who have doctor before their name could have also raised their hand when asked whether or not they had any of these disasters during their trip. So they're not they might be game changers, they might be things that cause a slightly different route, but they don't have to stop you in your tracks. So personal, let's look at that. And I do want to say, no one can or should tell you how to live your life. So through personal, professional, and university disasters, you are the one that needs to make the changes or the decisions. And there are no rights and wrongs here. I'm usually the voice of, 90% of the time, I'm the voice of stick it out, figure out how to get this done, because I personally know that it's a life changer to have doctor in front of your name. But on the other hand, I have seen many people up against things that perhaps the best thing was at least to take a break. So what's it like? These are things that I've heard. I just wanted to stop. I was caught like a deer in headlights. I couldn't think about anything other than what it would be like to live without my family member who was very sick. Then things settled into a new routine, going to the hospital and trying to keep the rest of my life going as well. So these are snippets. None of my quotes today have people's names after them for obvious reasons. But these are snippets, real life snippets, and things do settle into a routine. Even the worst we face, we go to the hospital regularly, we get chemotherapy, we do whatever it is, and there is a routine, and then out of the routine we can build other things that keep our lives going. So another student says, after a while, I took comfort in my doctoral work. Sitting in the hospital during operations, I could force my mind to focus on other things that became a solace for me. And here she is. This is Sonia Henderson. I use her work regularly. It's one of the best theses I personally had any activity with. And her dad died in the middle of the whole process, someone she was very, very close to. So she was the one, I think it's an amazing sentence of strength that she sat in the hospital with the worst fears she could imagine going on around her, and she focused her mind on what her data were telling her, and she did her data analysis, and that kept her sane. So there's a lot to be said, isn't there, for the human spirit and what we can endure and how we can get past it. My comment here would be to be realistic. If you or anyone you know is suddenly given a life-threatening diagnosis or some other personal disaster hits, going through a divorce, children very sick, whatever it is, I would recommend that you backwards map your new reality, because these challenges take your time, your attention, your just pure psychic energy. And if you don't have enough of it left to continue on the path that you're on at the speed that you were intending to do it, then earlier rather than later is a good time to figure out what your university's rules are for taking time off. Every university is different in this. Some simply, you disappear, you come back. Others have rules about you have to be consistently enrolled, and then they give you maybe 1 or 2, and if it's something drastic, there are things you can do to fill out paperwork, to get doctors to sign off, whatever it is. You will feel stronger if you're in a place where you're like a deer in headlights and you're just stopped with fear. You will feel stronger by finding out what your options are. So earlier rather than later. Backwards map your situation earlier rather than later. There is no use for you paying tuition for time that you aren't really using your university services. And just because you're not enrolled doesn't mean you can't keep doing some part of your work. So that's something else. It won't be the same, it won't be a lot, whatever, but you can still keep some modicum of your energy moving forward. And depending on your university rules, perhaps you can relieve yourself of some of the burden of tuition. Now, professional challenges, as I said, they can be a mixed bag. Pleasure or pain, maybe both. A new job, did you lose a job? Were you made redundant? But redundancy can have a package and you can have some time off. Maybe you were promoted, that's great. You absolutely deserve it, but then this new job takes up all your time and your doctoral work goes to the toilet. New boss, all of a sudden new demands, new ideas. You have to show up for this new person, make an appearance, etc. Or perhaps you're required to move. All of these things cause absolute chaos. So, the thing here is the same as it was before. Be realistic. Backwards map your reality. Go see if you can take some time off. But here's the new thing that comes with this. If your mind is still completely intact and your psychic energy is still completely intact, but you're just terribly busy and you have a lot of other things on your plate, you might be able to make this whole thing work if you get a coach or some other type of regular outside the university support system. Make it regular. Have milestones. Have things, make it part of your routine to check in to someone else. The problem with the doctoral process is that there aren't enough deadlines. So it's a setup. We've talked about this before when we talk about procrastination. It's a setup for procrastination because other things can come first. So if you are facing new or bad professional realities, this might be a good time to get help for your university realities. Extreme pressure seems to force a drive to keep looking forward. Yes, it does one of two things, Mark. It depends on how we're made up. Some people cave under pressure, and other people not flourish exactly, but come alive. And Annaline, you're exactly right. We started Doctoral Net as that kind of outside support system. But I'm talking in this case, if you can afford it, much more of a personal one-on-one. If you can't afford it, we're there, we're pretty good, but nothing is like having an outside coach if you are under a lot of stress. Nothing is like having somebody who reads everything you write, who helps you move it along, who has an idea about where you're going, who you can tell your whole truth to, and who meets you once every couple of weeks for a chat. And as far as coaches go, it's not a service that we make a lot of because it's not our prime business, which is selling our platform to universities. But DoctoralNet does have coaches available, but they're not cheap, folks, because we pay we pay professors. So there's always that trade-off on your time and your money. It's not a contest and it's not an equal situation. Both are true. This whole system that you're in was not set up for equality. The fact that it's become as equal as it has, the fact that people who don't have the social supports or financial supports coming into it can still earn a graduate degree, says a lot for education. But these were exclusive degrees when they were originally designed, and the Middle Ages saw people as serfs or exclusive. And that's the system that it grew out of. So no apologies there. It's just a history that we're dealing with. And hopefully online technology allows us to deal with it even better. Now, here's some stories to help you have hope, I think, when it comes to the fact that some challenges can be opportunities. There are silver linings. So this is one student saying, I paid the minimum tuition and took as much time off as I could when I started the research position. 2 years later, I had much better skills and found that my data analysis section needed to be completely rewritten. The first one was absolute crap compared to what I accomplished later. The next one is that I took on my new job. As I took on my new job, I was just finding my pre-proposal outline. I found a way to collect the data on the job, good for my new boss and great for me. This resulted in a more robust study than I would have had otherwise. And, by the way, that's my story. I was fortunate enough, I realized that I didn't have pre-proposal stage. I realized I didn't know enough about research. I had an opportunity to apply for a research job that was part-time, and I was able to find some funding for the research that was my doctoral research, and that funding got the rest of my job. And then also I worked at a research organization. They helped my research get stronger. So there are ways to maneuver. Everybody has a different story. So here's some ideas you might want to consider. First off, evaluate your values. I think doctoral students often have too high a sense of perfectionism. You have to rate your goals and this year in your life and next year in your life and decide what's number one and what's number two, and then what's the important part and what can slide. Once again, there are no rights and wrongs here, but if your new job, your new boss, your new whatever is exactly where you want to be in 5 years, then by all means give it your full and let the doctoral work slide. If, however, it isn't exactly where you want to be at all, don't give it 100% if your doctoral work is going to get you where you want to be. So you have to evaluate your values and what's important. Second thing, be authentic and open about your goals. Your work as a doctoral student, and this is something that we have going on in the background, and there will be a lot more of our work will come out, but you're building highly transferable job skills. And if you need more information about what they are because you need to make a case to a stakeholder, even before we're ready to publish them, I'll be happy to help. But you are building strong skills. You can make that as a case to your professional life as to why they should put up with you being a little slack in some areas because you're doing this work on the side. And for the university, the alternate can be true. Your professional job experience will make your research that more robust, and your understanding and your critical analysis skills that much robust. So sell yourself to both sides and be completely open and authentic. I think you'll find more support than you may know about right now. If there are concerns that these stakeholders have, listen to them, but then you decide the best course for yourself. No job is forever. No university is forever. Everything changes. You're the one who sets the path. So as soon as you hear or feel someone else telling you this is the only way, whether it's yourself or someone outside of you, then you immediately begin to question why. What have others done before me? Because I absolutely assure you there's no challenge you are facing that their other doctoral students have not, or master's students have not faced and gotten past. That's just what's true. So how do we work with hardships? One quote is that for this student, probably the most difficult part of attending graduate school overseas wasn't the education, but rather the act of putting their life on hold. Well, that's a choice, isn't it? Things are difficult. We do have to make difficult choices. We don't get to have it all at one time, but we do get to have it all over the course of time. So you're plotting your ship. What are you willing to give up now in order to make your dreams come true then? How do you keep it all moving along? Build yourself a 10-year plan and see if you can put the puzzle pieces together. I call this forward visioning, and to the extent that you have a good imagination, it really works well. Imagine yourself at the end of whatever challenge you're facing, then look back and ask, was there a way I could have done this differently? What other options did I have that I didn't see? And to the extent you can imagine yourself post the challenge, your intuitive voice will have answers to those two questions for you. It is problem solving, Mark. At its very basic, what this is all about is problem solving. But the first and foremost skill is a metacognitive skill to realize where you are and to disassociate your emotions from your circumstance enough to be able to plot the course. And it's all about balance. Annalene's exactly right. It's all about balance. So, hardships. I think that's a repeat. Buffers. In no particular order. You all have different lives here, but each of these will help. Your family and friends can help. Having meaningful activities sandwiched in the hardship activities, as with the woman who's doing her doctoral thesis in the hospital, or the person who is pulling out their thesis. They get to work early so they can work on their thesis before work really starts. They work over their lunch break. They stay late. So they're actually getting work done before they go home to their kids, which is a whole nother set of challenges. So meaningful activities sandwiched in between. Learning assertiveness with those who have power over you. I have seen many students have a very difficult time saying no. And you have to be able to say no when somebody puts more on you than is reasonable. And thanks, Annalene. Love does buffer is the list, we hope. Love of ourselves to say no, love of our lives to put meaningful activities in places, keeping our eye on the goal, love of our potential, relationships with our faculty. Hopefully you all have found at least one person in your faculty that you can talk to as a person. Mental and physical health professionals. We don't want to see any of you run your mental or physical health into the hole, and we have distressing factors that Sometimes graduate students are the highest users of mental health facilities on campus because they don't know when to say no. Meditation is a fabulous tool for life. If you haven't ever explored it, it might be a good time to do so. And physical exercise and anything that gives you good health. So that's a basic list of buffers for everything, isn't it? But it's buffers for this. Now, let's go into the specific disasters that only students can appreciate. So these are true stories. Lost all my data in a computer crash. Can just imagine what that felt like. My advisor or supervisor, depending on what they were called at that university, chair, died. And the new one wants a completely different study. 3 committee members, all suggesting often conflicting ideas. Can't get the population needed for your study. Sent the final draft to an editor, paid a fortune, and it came back with errors and any others. So, thank you, Annalene. What, please put up here, type in your chat, if any of these ring a bell, and if you have any others. We'll get to that, absolutely. There are help for some of these, but do any of these, all right, is anybody in this room worried, besides Annalene, worried about any of these? Or are you worried about something else? And if you would you please type it in? Well, we have a very unworried room. Last going once, going twice. Okay, then I'll quickly forward vision, build a graduate school with a basis on real advancement of knowledge, not complying with opinion by someone who is clueless. And the way to do that, Mark, is to get your degree, figure out a jobs thing that gets you there. And I'll be glad to help, because there are lots of people trying to rework the graduate system to better, less better results. But it's a conversation worthy of carrying on. Let me tell you this story. A geography student set out to write a thesis on a weathering of rocks on a volcanic island in the Pacific. She was hoping to show that bacteria from human settlements are key in the speed of weathering. However, in the course of her project, she runs into difficulties with her visa, forcing her to come home early. She has to radically alter her research methodology to collect data as quickly as possible, and then in the end, she has to change the scope of her research using more theoretical arguments from outside her field rather than lots of her own data in order to finish her project on time. Because she had a clear goal and a system of evaluating her progress, she had the ability to work flexibly. She adjusted her techniques to pursue the research question rather than floundering on that when her original plan did not work out. So, challenge of all kinds comes into this process. Ideas to consider. U.S. only. If you are in pre-proposal stage, you don't have a ground to stand on if things go wrong at your university. You are at their mercy to them telling you what to do. However, that's the reason for the proposal defense. And once you have a proposal defended by your university, it serves in litigation as a contract where they have to give you your degree as long as you meet the requirements for research set up by common evaluation standards as that proposal was written. In other words, if you have someone die and they want a different study later, if you have passed your proposal, they can't ask you to make a change. Lost data. Best cure, as Adrian said, is prevention. Back it up in lots of places. Take it seriously. Do it often. Conflicting requirements. Your committee has a responsibility to work those out. Be what's the word I want? Strategic and a good team member, but pass it to them and get them to talk to each other. Point out that the conflicting requirements are making it not possible for you to finish. And if needed, go over their heads. Your universities have graduate studies offices for a reason, and that reason is to give you mediation as well as anything else at your university. Can't get the population? Well, let me tell you a Nuke's story. He promised himself and the world that he was going to have 200 in his survey results, n equals 200. And the first go round, what he was sure was easily going to give him 200, gave him something like 25. He didn't give up. He personally beat the streets with survey in hand. He went to other groups. He had it published in the local newspaper. He did all these different things. And he got his 200. It took him 6 months longer than he thought it would, but he got it done. So don't give up. Editing issues, prevention again. If you go for outside editing, which is not a bad thing to do, have an agreement with the person before you agree that they're going to be your editor, that once they turn it over to you, if there are mistakes or you find other things, that they will correct those things at no additional cost. And there are all kinds of things show up in editing. One is that they may be in a different part of the world than you're in. They may spell things differently. They may have word editing set up differently. They may not know your style manual as well as you do. People make mistakes. What you won't see when you get your edited work back are all the little things they found that made your work that much better. You will still be hypersensitive to their mistakes. So just have it worked out. It won't cost you anything, and you'll be fine. So, devils, or back your money. I don't think so, Mark. Editing's a really critically hard thing to do. But certainly mistakes should be made up without having any additional cost. One backup support system, group of people who are non-experts reading your work. If it makes sense to anyone, then you're on the right track. And then they often ask good questions. So that's an excellent. Anybody else here have some good suggestions for people that you know of? Do you know stories where people have really either prevented this well and we all should share it, or have perhaps gotten past a disaster? Please don't hesitate to share. And then my question is, wasn't a particularly long conversation today, and we'll certainly open up. Mark says he has questions later. But on a score of 1 to 5, did I meet the goals? I wanted these notes to offer hope and to help you feel those things. Annaline is my easiest, my easiest editor. How about the rest of you? Maybe a little tougher on us. No problem. And Sedan, would there have been questions we could have answered that would have, or particular disasters you might have had in mind that would ramp this up to make it even more profitable for other people? Ronnie, glad it was helpful. And you want your chair to be a visiting chair, from the Harvard School of Negotiation. And does your university have a visiting chair option, and has the person in Harvard any interest in doing so? Those would be my two questions to J. Mark. Sayasidan, any hints for future? And any other comments? I'm going to turn off the recording for just a minute. So before I do, I just want to point out to anybody who wasn't able to attend today, but it's watching the recording somewhere close to the end of May, that summertime is a difficult time. Summertime in our part of the world, Annalene, of course, it's winter. But in the Northern Hemisphere, summertime is a difficult time for students to get stuff done. And we see every year all these people with good intentions that look like the PhD comic later with the to-do list that didn't get anywhere. One of those things might be, do you have it on your to-do list to get published? So we are supporting a course that will meet. It's up in Big Marker. You would require that you sign up for all of them. You don't have to actually attend. You can come by recording. It'll be a similar series like as this, but I will expect the people in the room to share, to read each other's work, to come to coursework online like you come to coursework in a class. The goal is that at the end, everyone has a document that they're ready to send off to a publisher. It doesn't need to have, you don't need to have your data. It can be that you want to get your lit review published. And the good thing about publishing a lit review is that it is often heavily cited. The hard thing is finding the journals that publish lit reviews. So there's some ups and downs with it. But I know some of you have a full proposal, but you don't have data, and that might be an option. Or you know people who need to get something published as part of their degree, they should know about this. And thank you, J. Mark, for saying I'm not a PhD throne-based tyrant. I've served way too many people in way too many universities to be that. So thank you, everyone who came by recording as well. I hope this was giving you some good feedback. If I go back and so Sayasidan suggests to me that the solutions and methods to motivate students with difficulties were not comprehensive. And that leads me to some tools that I think I will close with. If you need motivation to keep going, the basic things that Doctoral Net offers are the 30-day writing challenge, the 30-day work-life balance challenge, the 365 motivational emails, or the top 10 motivational emails. Go check them out. They're on any one of our portals under the Resources tab. When motivation is a problem, I recommend that you hire one of our coaches just for an hour. Because one of the things we do is a one-on-one, why are you doing this? What is standing in your way? What are the blockages and how can you get past them? And then what kind of milestones can you set up? And what other outside support services can you make use of to help you go along your way? What your university cares about is that you complete a degree that is of a certain quality. You are responsible for guiding the ship within those waters and outside of those waters. So thank you for that question, Sayasidan. And I'm apologies if I'm fracturing your name. Some of the answers to these questions are personal, and so go for some personal help. it's better than not. Okay, so if you, and he's also asking regarding the want to get published. If you go to the Big Marker conference space, and let me just pull that link. You will see, if you scroll down, starting in June, I left them all, they're brightly colored boxes. Let's get published. And those are the publishing, and you would have to sign up for all of them. Okay, so people watching by recording, once again, thank you very much. People in the room, I'll be right back as I stop the recording, and then we can have conversations about anything. Okay, recording is over.